Hello, everybody. Hello. I just got a signal from Carol that we could now start. And I don't know if you want to grab a seat and a glass of wine.
So, I'm introducing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Hello. Okay. So, hi. My name is Roberto De Vic. I'm Vice President of TDC, and I'm here to introduce Dirk, and also to do some housekeeping for the TDC. We have our next guest was going to be Abbott Miller on October 7th, but he had to cancel because he had to fly with a special client of his. We don't mention who it is, but he has big lips and he has his own private jet. But on Wednesday, on October 8th, I mean, wouldn't you like to have a client like know him? I think, yes, I think that you'd like to know him. But on Wednesday, October 8th, we're going to have the head show print, and on the next day there is a workshop at the Arms in Brooklyn on letterpress. October 9th, we have an ebook panel with Charles Nix and some other people. You can look at all this at the TDC website. October 14th, we have an Ella Luna who used to work at, has a student in San Francisco. She used to work in IDO. Very interesting speaker. We have original champion of design on the 16th, October 16th. We have Kevin Shaw from Strange and Stranger who do packaging on October 21st. On the 23rd, we have Bruno Mag and from Dalton Mag talking about type and Intel. On October 28th, we have Nancy Ruimi talking about books that she's doing for Rizzoli. And on November 4th, we have Eric Spickerman at Parsons. I have to say, as a crowd, it looks so much nicer than our usual crowd. Our usual crowd is always jeans. There's some hair. They all look 18. You look so presentable. I mean, I think it's a European thing. I mean, it's like that. Yeah, they are all Europeans. Yes, very, very. Yes. So, yeah, exactly. So, and then we have, this exhibition that you see is the final type, the original type, the type at Cooper, the people that type at Cooper did, and they finalizing by creating a type specimen that we show here, and then we have a reception in November. What else we have? We have 3 posters left from John Downer's hand-painted posters here at TDC. The profit of the poster goes to the scholarship program. If you want to see the last 3, they are with Carol, and we have classes October 24th and 26th on glyphs. That's going to be taught by Matteo. On November 14th, we have Mike Fortress doing icons, for types. And November 21st, we have printed web workshop with Paul Solelis. Now, Dirk. Dirk is a communication designer with more than 20 years of experience in the US and Germany. Since 2004, he's also a professor at the University of Applied Science in Bielefeld, Germany, teaching typography and editorial design. Here is Dirk.
So, great to see you. I'm very happy that you all came to this presentation and that I'm not just here all by myself. You also will see some kind of experiment going on here. I will do some experiment with water and wine, and we'll see how how this transformation is going on. It should fill up. The wine should fill up on the right side. Oh, I'm sorry. Louder? Good? Better? Okay. So here we go. I got the signal that I have 45 minutes to present 2,400 pages, right? One page after another. Okay, I try my best. Yes, thanks a lot for the introduction, so you know all these informations. Basically, I'm here, yes, to represent myself, my project, and also this Institute for Buchgestaltung, which I founded in like 7 years ago. And of course, the Bible is a huge project, and it's the project at the moment of this institute, and that's what I'm going to show you. So, who is the person in front of you? There's some stuff on the back. Okay, this is me, yes. Designer, professor, founder of Institut in Bielefeld, and like Roberto was saying, Bielefeld, what is this? You know, have you ever been there? Do I have to go there? Do I have to know this place? I don't know. It's here where the blue spot is. You know, somewhere in the northwest of Germany, close to Hanover, and somewhere close to Dortmund and Düsseldorf and whatever. Maybe better known because of these, you know, for Roman times, you know, it's situated in the Teutoburger forest, and there was this major defeat. Romans were defeated by Arminius the Great, and not sure if it was a good thing, you know, that actually the Romans didn't make it into our area. You know, we left out so many things. All the good food, you know, no central heating for 2,000 years. Not sure. We have an old town, and we have all these German stuffs too. You know, we have a castle, and we also have some nightlife, a little bit nightlife at least. And maybe one of the best things actually is has a very good train connection going from the west to the east, and it's good to get out. It's easy to get out. All right, so Institut für Buchgestaltung, what is it? Founded this place, and what we do usually, we cooperate quite a lot with publishers. This is just a little project that I'm showing that we've done with Birkhäuser in Switzerland, in Zurich, which was quite nice. It was like a brochure that we've come up with to demonstrate their capabilities. And we do a lot of symposia and conferences on book design and on writing books and doing books, and we are inviting all sorts of people. And we do advancing of book design. We're trying to promote book design. We have an internal competition going on. We invite jurors from different places, from other universities, to make this a more objective process. And we're going to present, or usually we present the best books at the book fairs in Frankfurt and Leipzig most of the time. We also do researching. Researching is always a big. Sounds always so great, but we do that. We did a digital atlas. Is atlas the right word? I hope so. For kids, it was the University of Bielefeld, and it was a lot of fun. Kids had fun too, but the most fun they had was actually fooling around with all these tablets devices. We do a lot of publishing too. We publish magazines. This one here, and it's also quite interesting because I do this all with my students, and sometimes it's very, very, as you can see, very challenging for them, and they're really exhausted at the end. But I guess the learning process is intense. Other stuff that was published somewhere. Okay, and we also design. This is actually quite nice about an institute. I mean, you do publish and you do write and you put everything together, but also you have to promote it somehow. And we've done some, these are posters that we did for, asking people to actually submit their best book design work. This was also, I guess, promoted by the TDC. It's also in the TDC annual. I also brought some stuff here, which is on the right, if you want to just pick it up and take it home. That's some of the advertising material, marketing material. We translated this kind of language into like a whole design and CD program, which is usually changed every year or every second year. And the book fair design has the same layout. Okay, the project that I'm talking about is really the Bible. This project alone is keeping us very busy for 5 years now. So we do other books too, just to be to finish something sometime, to feel good about finishing something. But the Bible is really the project that we're working on. The team is made up by me and also by master students usually. but they do it like they're not forced to join this group. they have a deep interest in actually in doing this project. And then we have like these two people, and then we have another two guys here, Lukas Timmer and Bastian Petzold, who are also helping out for the last 2 years. But this is actually back up the team by another 55, mostly master, bachelor students and graduates. That's a huge team that's actually working on the Bible. Why that is, I will explain a little bit later, why this team is so big. But it's not just the designers, it's actually an interdisciplinary team made up by designer and publisher, which is not necessarily interdisciplinary, but there's another party, which are the exegetists. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this term. No. Not really. Exegesis is, like exegesis is basically another expression for biblical studies. These are basically scholars, but the scholars do it in on an academic level, basically. They're also from a university in Frankfurt, and this is a cooperation between a university in Frankfurt and a publisher in Freiburg in the south of Germany. And that's difficult. I mean, interdisciplinary work is really, really difficult. You can see the scholar here, up here. Quite unusual because it's a female scholar, and in our Catholic world, basically, there are not many female scholars. I mean, I guess like 5% maybe. And it's quite interesting because her boss, basically one of the most renowned scholars in Germany, suggested her because he said, I'm too old. I can't do it. I'm 80. He was 83 or whatever. We said, like, what? You're too old? We want to finish the Bible next year, kind of. Totally naive. And like 5 years later, we know what he was talking about. He said, like, I have somebody really young for you. You can work with her, Okay. That's it, And then over time, actually, we worked really well together, the exegetist and the designer. The publisher was kind of out of the picture. I don't know. He was like, I can work on other stuff. You just go ahead. So sometimes we asked ourselves, do we need a publisher? Can we just do everything ourselves? The designers. And also, do we need exegetists? Can we also just do everything? Why do we have to work with them? Is it such a pain in the neck? And then the exegetist got really strong at some point and telling us all the time everything was wrong. You did this wrong, and this is wrong emphasis, and you can't do that, and blah, blah, blah. And you can imagine 73 different texts, and always getting feedback and moaning and fussing about everything that we've done. It was basically a battle between accuracy and readability, I would say. Maybe this is a little bit simplified, but I guess that was kind of the fight that was going on. And so we were not always friends, as this picture is showing you a little bit. And I really learned, this is definitely not teamwork. Interdisciplinary work is fighting. It's like trying to who's right, who's wrong. These two parties don't really go together. They don't match. But maybe you have to find a way to come up with a product that is still doesn't belong to the one party and the other party, but actually needs both parties to get advanced. So we find some kind of overlap. Eventually, it took us a while. We found a language. Actually, found some kind of rules of conduct, how to behave, how to work with each other. And finally, there was this kind of great idea. Wow, we have this kind of thing called design Jesus, maybe, and so all the problems are solved. But of course, and we celebrated everything. We said, like, this is great, and everybody loved the project. It was just pure. It was like dreamland. It was paradise. But of course not. Of course, can't be. There can't be. We cannot live. We have maybe same clothes and look similar, but there's not a huge overlap between those two disciplines. But still, there is a need to come together, and that's actually the reader. That's actually what brought us together. I mean, both the designers and also the exegetes are really interested in, making the Bible more accessible, I would say. And that really, this was actually the common ground that we found, to actually work and interact together, to really say, we have the same goal, kind of, with different reasons. And maybe if you focus on the reader, then we can actually go on. And that's actually where the publisher came back in, at some point. The designer, they can go really wild with their stuff, and the exegetes also, and you need the publisher kind of to bring it all together and make a point, at some time to say, what are you doing this for? This is really for the reader, and also he's also telling you to stop at some point, when he really feels like now get some reader feedback in, stop it, stop this academic process right now. Okay, we still have no idea what the Bible is, I guess, right? So that took, so from there we actually did a lot of preliminary work to find out what we actually want to do about the Bible. We felt that the Bible was a very interesting project from a designer's point of view and also from an exegete's point of view. Something had to be done. But if you look at all these different versions of Bibles, there are hundreds, there are thousands. Is there anything left to do, really? Can you make it better? Can you make it... What is it exactly what you criticize, So you buy a lot of stuff and look at it very close, and you find a lot of very similar layout types, especially like from the 20th century and the 19th century. Still like looking for a definition, what could it be? Sometimes it helps actually to translate the words that you're actually working with and finding out that biblia, the Latin word, means actually books. It's actually a plural word. It means actually, you can say book of books. Sometimes it was misunderstood. It was like, oh, book of books. It's the book, It's the book. It's better than everything else. No, it actually means it's a book containing a lot of books. It's actually the direct translation. And we said, maybe there's some kind of like a library idea. Maybe there's some kind of idea here. So, and also it was fascinating because it's translated in over 2,000 languages, I didn't know before when I started the project that there were 2,000 languages. 2,000? I thought like 200, 250? What? 2,000? Some dialects? But I don't get it. Like, where are these languages coming from? Anyway, and it's the world's most widely spread book still. There's other publications like the IKEA catalog, which is like more widely spread, but as a book, it's still that's still the one, So it's as a designer, we can't ignore it, I would say, and it shaped our languages over centuries. I don't know so many English idiomatic phrases that are coming from the Bible, but I think eye for an eye, right? Can you help me out? Can you throw in some sentences, some words that are coming from the Bible, which are used in everyday English? Anybody?
In the beginning.
In the beginning, yes. Okay, what else?
The word.
The word?
The word, like you created from the word.
Yeah,
okay. Word? Okay. So okay, but maybe a little bit longer phrases. I don't know. In Germany, because Luther did. I'm coming to this a little bit later. He did a fantastic job at translating the Bible from the Greek and Hebrew and language into German. He did and Aramaic, of course. And he came up with so many new ideas how to translate that, and they were these constructions weren't there before. Some of he actually stole from looking at how people actually were communicating, but the other ones he actually just came up with, and people, because they've had the Bible all day long, then suddenly used his language, in the everyday world. It's pretty amazing. So it shaped our languages, and it's interesting, if you hate the Bible, you don't like to read the Bible, and you swear at the Bible, you still do it with the words of the Bible. It's like, you can't get out of it, in the Western world at least. This is my Bible from school. I got it out and looked at it again. I said, why? What was the problem with the Bible? Why wasn't I so interested in the Bible for such a long time? I don't know. Pretty heavy. I'm not so sure about the layout and the bind. difficult, and scholars are always it captures kind of the situation when scholars are falling asleep over reading the Bible. They kept us telling that. They said, like, even us, we know it so well, and after 20 minutes of reading or 30 minutes, we're really falling asleep, And they never came up with the idea that it might be a design problem. One of the scholars did. One of the scholars actually had this idea it might also be a design problem. So the point is, after looking at all the stuff, we found out it lacks. I mean, to use like very modern terms, it lacks usability. It's almost like a software or like a computer describing some kind of a computer device. Usability is not reader friendly. It's not really reader friendly. Might have to do also with the content, but you know what, we are designers, so maybe we can do something on the layout to make it more user-friendly. So maybe here's a point, maybe the Book of Books could be a reader's delight. For some it is anyway, I guess, for more religious people, but for others that have a Bible at home but never opened it, maybe it's not a delight. So maybe it could become a delight even for those people that are not totally religious, maybe. So again, we looked at the history of Bible layout because it wasn't always that boring. Right in the beginning, this is the first scroll, the Isaiah scroll, that actually was that we have today, the oldest remaining part of a manuscript, 2nd century BC, 2,200 years old. And it was like, I have to look it up because it was 7.3 meters wide, really a massive. How much is it? Is it in feet? 24 feet. 24 feet wide. So it was maybe the layout. If you can see a little bit of it, it has all these columns. Is still not maybe totally engaging, but the sheer size was quite impressive. Then also that's also interesting from a book designer's point of view. The whole development of book design can be really studied by studying the Bible. So going from the scroll, actually the papyri, the codex came up. First it was the single Ply Codex. I'm really jumping ahead in huge. I mean, really in centuries. Yeah, that's a little bit. I have to because the time is running out. But this was like the maybe a very early beginning of a book, of something that comes close to our Bible layout today. 2nd century, it was like a saddle-stitched. Mostly it was actually a loose, sometimes just a 2-page codex version here, but sometimes eventually they took a few of those leaves and actually saddle-stitched them together to some kind of a more brochure, pretty thin book, and had lots of them actually. Then I'm jumping ahead another 200 years because the Codex, I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Sinaiticus? Sorry, Codex Sinaiticus, 4th century. That's actually quoted very often, this one, because this is really like a multiply book which is set with thread sewn, thread stitched. Does it ring a bell? Thread stitched versions, okay. So it looks really like a book, and this one has actually the whole New Testament in one book. That's the first one that we actually know about. So you can already see the layout. You have 4-column layout. The layout of the book looks very squarish, but we're coming closer. So now I make another huge jump. I can say that from the 4th century until the 12th century, there was a great time of where all these wonderful manuscripts were produced. The better and richer and more intense, the better. All the churches try to have really, really beautiful Bibles. It's also interesting to study this Winchester Bible because it took 15 years to do that. So we are now in our 5th year. Still like, so not I hope not 10 years to go, but they were very patient at the time. And also it was interesting to learn that there's so many different jobs involved in doing this Bible. It was the scripter, we all know the scriptors doing the writing. Do you know how long this took? Usually the average Bible in the 13th century or 12th century?
No.
A guess?
30 years.
30? No. It's a good guess. 5 years is good. 3 years in average. And better ones, like the like more elaborated ones, took 5 years, so 3 to 5 years. So you can imagine like a usual, like average scripter was able to do, maybe if he had a really good health, wasn't drinking too much, maybe he could maybe produce, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 10 Bibles. That's it, finished, you know. And then if something went wrong, very often they had to destroy the whole work of one day, you know. But it wasn't just the scripters. Sorry? Yeah.
Were they kind of the equivalent of graphic designers, or were they theologians?
They were more like, the scripters were more like typesetters, typographers, I would say. Then you also had the job of the illuminators, and they were like illustrators. We could maybe compare that. And then, very often forgotten, there are the rubricators. Those that actually try to put in footnotes, like there was some kind of a service, information design going on, you know, and they were like, that took a long time, sometimes also a year, just to put all in these footnotes. From here, you could go to there. There's some kind of tricks going on too, you know. You were standing, because you have to remember, at the time the Bible was still not very widespread. So people, you know, read the Bible to you, and they could, like, you know, as we have learned from here, and as it's pointed out, it looked really smart, like somebody having keynotes, like notes up as a speaker, you know, and looking totally like he knows everything. But it was actually, there are footnotes in the book. Okay, so from here, Gutenberg Bible, which was, of course, the first printed, printed with movable types, printed version in Germany and in Western Europe. I mean, there were other printing. There was other printing with movable types in other areas, other regions of the world. But the Bible was basically the first thing. What was quite impressive is that Gutenberg, in about 3 years' time, they produced 180 copies of that, you know, which is like today, 180 copies in 3 years, that's like nothing, but it was a revolution, basically. He did it with 22 people and 260 characters. 260 characters were used to actually set this Bible, to make it even better looking, and the alignments of the columns to make this even smoother. What's quite interesting also then, from another jump ahead to the Lutheran Bible, which was done in the 16th century. Luther really carried on this idea of spreading the Bible. He translated the Bible into German, made it really, really popular. Early in the beginning, already 1/3 of all people in Germany that could read had actually a Bible, which was like amazing. And he produced about a million books in his lifetime. But in 400 editions, 400, it's unbelievable. Always corrected them in a new edition and then complete edition, absolutely insane. With also like this great artists, with Lukas Kronach, the great, in Wittenberg, amazing illustrations as well. 400 years later. So you have to basically see, in between there was a lot going on in trying to make the Bible smaller, make it cheaper, make it like more accessible, you know, allow more people to actually have a Bible, basically with a smaller income. And basically, but at some point in the 19th century, this is saying 20th century, in the 19th century, actually there was a layout, basically established itself, or was established, like a 2-column grid that we all know of, which is kind of predominant now. And most Bibles, it doesn't matter if English or German, look similar. Then in the 20th century, there was in many countries there was a trend of illustrated Bibles. A lot of artists actually entered the Bible world, and Chagall and basically Richter. I mean, so many people actually did a Bible. But usually there was this similar setup of the type, and then there was some illustrations were added to the Bible to make it more valuable or more interesting. Then the next step, the Zurich Bible from Switzerland, was actually a great step in Bible design. It doesn't look like this. But they separated. They said, like, there are poems and there's prose in the Bible. So why don't we just set everything that's more like prose in a justified form, and flush left typography for poems, like they really see the verse and all that. That was very logic, but it wasn't that common at the time. And then more Bibles actually came up. Like for this one, the Basis Bible was a version where it's pretty new, but it said we have to work on the text itself too. We have to make it easier, and we have to put a lot of footnotes and explanations in there to to allow people to really understand what the Bible is all about. So if you look to the right, there's these two bars, these two vertical bars, and there are also like lots of footnotes. It's maybe a little bit more transparent from a designer's perspective. I don't know. It's still like it looks a little bit maybe like too academic. Too much explanation, and I guess some of the emotional quality is lost by this kind of presentation. And then quite an interesting approach was the Bible as a magazine. Somebody did that. Again, here we liked this new approach, but we weren't so sure if it actually works for all the texts in the New Testament, because there were letters and there were their biographies, and to present everything in the same kind of magazine style, we couldn't think, we didn't feel it was right, but it was interesting, at least. Again, we didn't know what is our Bible, what could our Bible do, and we said maybe it's kind of the body language of the Bible text, if you could actually kind of show, this kind of the diversity really that's in the Bible. Maybe that's actually the thing that we could actually do and try to show. First of all, unfortunately it's a little covered up there. First of all, we've seen that looking at the whole Bible text, it depends which one you're looking at, between 66 and 73 texts. If you just take the whole thing and actually see if there are any logical parts that you could actually split up, we saw that, of course, the New Testament is maybe its own unit, I guess, for a lot of reasons. And the Torah, the first volume, is also a part that is quite logical. But there were three more parts where we felt, of course, in discussion with the scholars, made actually quite sense to also present them in separate volumes. So there was a history part, and there was a wisdom part, and prophets. In these parts, there were a lot of stories and a lot of text, really, containing text that dealt with history or with wisdom or with prophetic texts. And that for us was one of the first ways to show diversity, because these books, of course, as you can see maybe by these lines, are different in size and in weight and in thickness. So you could always see that history was pretty. There was a lot of history text in the Bible, and the beginning and the New Testament is like in the middle, but they a little bit all the volumes are a little bit different. And then going one step further, we saw that maybe if you look at all the text, you could actually categorize them somehow. Using modern literary categories. Maybe one is like letters, which is pretty obvious, and then novellas and novels. I mean, novellas as a shorter version of novels. Legal text, you have quite a few of those. You have saga kind of text. This is very simplified, of course. They are not exact sagas. They're not exact novels, because these categories were invented later, of course. But like from today's perspective, looking at the Bible, you could say yes, they're similar, or like biographies, or the Gospels basically of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Johannes, prophetic apocalyptic text, wisdom literature, and chronicles, and of course chants, poems, and prayers. These kinds of literary categories could be found throughout the Bible, and so the next idea was, so why don't we show it? Why don't we just show it? So if we say the book of the Judges is basically a saga, is close to saga, why don't we actually set it as in a way a saga would look today? Or if it's a legal text on the upper right, why don't we just present it as a law book? Or if it's a text down below, like a prophetic apocalyptic text, why don't we show it more more like a novel style? Or why can't just a letter look like a letter? So very, very simple idea, basically. Again, then for the other ones as well. So this basically gives you an overview of what you will find in this new Bible, next to each other. Next decision was the size, which was very interesting for us. Most Bibles are now 5 by 8 inches. That's like a pretty common size for most Bibles. This is very economic. It really depends a lot on the paper size, basically. The printing machines, basically. It's a result of the printing process. But this size was actually pretty bad for us to show diversity, because it's relatively small and letters are relatively big. So we said, is there any compromise maybe that we could find to show larger formats like letters also in this Bible format? How can we show it? Because if you show a letter design in a tiny book, it never looks like a letter. It's like it's no way to do that. And so all these things are basically there, and we came up with a compromise of saying maybe this is a format that is still kind of is economic, is possible, and but can actually house all these different formats. So it's like 7.1 by 9.4 inch. In inch it's a little bit, the numbers are a little bit strange, but in centimeters are 18 by 24 with 3 by 4 proportion. So again, you can see the dotted line is basically like a normal size Bible, standard size Bible, and ours is the not dotted line, it's a little bit larger. So, or like if you see the photograph and you have the hand as a reference, you can see how big the book is. Choice of typeface, another important part. We're very much into Scala, at this time, for the typographer, which is Scala fans. It was out already for quite a few years, but we felt that it made the Bible text look pretty contemporary in a way. There's a certain roughness about it. It has tradition, and it's very readable at the same time. We liked also the large family, and luckily Martin Major came up with a larger family, the FF Nexus, in 2004. We were also about thinking maybe we have to do our own typeface, but we were lucky that actually Martin Major had this unbelievably big family of typefaces, 2004, which didn't just have serif, sans, and mix. It also had way more. You can see it's unbelievable. I show you some samples. So serif, of course, sans as usual, mix, swashes. Sometimes you can use swashes too, typewriter. And all based on the same skeleton. I saw that's pretty remarkable. Also we like this idea of all the Bible texts are kind of interconnected in a certain way. They all share the same tradition, and they are all interconnected, but they're also different. How can we show both at the same time, a connection and also differences between the texts? We also liked again the way the letters are drawn. Are you familiar with this typeface Nexus? Yeah. I brought you, thanks to FontShop, I brought you a type specimen, and I actually put a lot on these desks, so just feel free to grab one. They're nicely designed by Wim Westerveld from Holland, and I think they show the principle, the way they're designed quite nicely. And it has this hand-drawn feeling to it, but the way he actually digitalized the typeface is quite interesting, we found. Also, look at this, look at the R, very close. It almost feels wrong, Or we know the concept of two V's, just pushing on top of each other, but they're not cleaned up, they're just left this way. Look at the F. Of course, it's a text typeface, so most of the time you don't see it, it's printed. And it's usually 10 to 12 points, so most of the details you're not going to see. But it still has a certain roughness when printed that we really liked a lot. Kind of recognizable. That's the next part. So how could we actually visualize the nature of the text, And for example, with Job, that's wisdom literature. It's called a Job? Job. Okay, good. So that's always like the translation. I know the German word, which is Eob, and then job. How does it translate? Or like Ezra Nehemiah, which was more Nehemiah. Okay, so this was showing more the chronicle kind of aspect of the text, of listing a lot of things. Talking about like the generations basically in the books, and a lot of people. And also like the book of Revelation, which was it's falling into the prophetic, apocalyptic text, So we try to express that something. The old world is basically is basically going down, but the new world is going to emerge. So how do we actually express that? And then we have the text of Zechariah. Is it correct? Okay. So to have all these texts next to each other to actually show the different characteristics. And that was one part, like to visualize the different nature of the text and make it really transparent. The other thing was to stimulate the joy of reading. How could you do that? We felt like maybe if we really highlight certain areas, always in discussion with the scholars, of course, maybe it actually allows you to actually enter the text in an easier way. Genesis is very monumental, so I guess in a few, this is a very exceptional case anyway. In some areas, some books, you can really do that, really highlight one phrase because it's all said. Es werde Licht, let there be light. Right? That's the English translation. That's just done. This is such a monumental sentence. One sentence aspect basically saying most of it. Or like the Psalms, why can't the Psalms just look like a book of Psalms? And then, of course, can we make it easier? Is it possible to make it easier to actually have access to the text? And we looked also into structural things. We put in emphasis where it was possible, So Windhauch, the word in English would be vanity, I would say. And vanity is a very important word in the Ecclesiastes text, and we pointed this out. Or like we used, of course, the chapter numbers and to actually, we kept the chapter numbers in there, but the first numbers, which are in the text, we actually took them out, which led to lots of discussions, of course. How can you do that, and how can I find a certain part of the text if I'm looking for this? True, but you can see on the ground there's still some kind of a reference, or here, way down here. So it tells you kind of where you are at the Bible, but the advantages of taking out the first numbers is very high because it makes reading much easier. Because the numbers sometimes, if they're inserted in the text, they always emphasize certain parts which feel important, but sometimes it's just really, it's just a standard. There's a lot of discussion on this going on, but on the other hand, we say this is not replacing the other Bible layouts. We have plenty of the other versions. This is really a reader's Bible, and why not try it in this version? To do this without first numbers. If the publisher in the end, is really going to take this risk, we will find out next week. So some structural elements like lines and whatever. So basically, to sum it up, another point: a better understanding by a more intensive reading is actually what we're trying. What our goal is. And now, because I was telling you about all these things that we try to achieve and accomplish, I would like to show some examples, just a few, to make it a little bit more transparent. First example would be Judges. For those that are not familiar with the text of the Judges, I guess I don't know who's not really familiar with this book, with the content. Okay, good. It's I made it very short, and I tried to compress it into like a 2-sentence thing. Report from which is like very difficult. I guess I'm gonna get killed by the scholar if she sees it. So basically, the book is a report from a pre-state phase of Israel. The Israelites become unfaithful to God and serve the Baals. And the core message is really, despite their evil deeds and serving other people next to God, and punishment, the Israelites should continue to trust in God. And it's classified as a saga. And the tonality of the text is could be seen as monumental and threatening. And so design concept is very easy. We should do something that is inspired by sagas with strong typographic emphasis. And then we looked for inspiration for the judges, and we found lots of sagas, like medieval sagas, all kinds. And usually, actually, we always looked for more modern representation of that kind of category, because some of these older layouts of sagas are not widely known anymore. So you can't trigger the right effect. You have to actually get inspired by more modern-looking sagas. So that's actually what we did with the Book of Judges. Like what we said, there's certain kind of monumental elements to it. Then like very simple layout, and sometimes some caps, really large caps, smaller caps. And then also the differentiation between songs, prose, songs, chants, prayers, and the rest of the text. Then Zechariah, is that right? I'm going to learn it if I do it like 10 more times. To sum it up, it's a reconstruction of the destroyed temple of Jerusalem. That's what it's all about. The message is it's actually a sign against the hopelessness, belief in the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the restructuring of Israel. If you want for classification, it's a prophetic apocalyptic text. Could be compared with a drama, and its tonality is dynamic, exciting, and powerful. And what our concept was, like, you could maybe get inspired by closet dramas with stage text elements. And the inspiration, okay, of course, that's the way we actually today see dramas. The drama layouts changed over time, but that's kind of a pretty average way how we actually perceive drama layouts. Like with some caps or very small caps. Look at some, the text. Anyway, we looked at a lot of different stuff. And the layout now looks like a prophetic apocalyptic text, but has drama elements also. That's quite interesting about the Bible. I find that very often it doesn't just fall in one category. Sometimes there actually are two categories in one book, which I think is really amazing. If you now look at modern literature, they do similar stuff. Sometimes they import, they mix drama elements with prose. So it's not a new thing really. It was done like 2,000 years ago. So just to give you a few pages here, what it looks like. Then another example, Philippians. Paul is a letter. Paul warns the church of Philippi against heresies, and his warning is a warning and encouragement of the Philippians. And letter is the basic classification of this, and it's critical, serious, but also warm and personal. And yes, very surprising. We did a letter. And what could letters look like? What is a letter anyway? Is it really basically, we said the letter is basically a very brief written medium, pretty rather short, 2 pages, 3 pages. Could be more elaborate, like a speech. It could be also a very rough text. That's maybe more modern representations. We consider to be letters. So in this case, that's the layout. So sometimes we also use the typewriter, even that one, very rarely. But in those cases where we felt there was like some kind of an urgency in the letter, or the letter was actually written really, really quickly in a very, very short time. Some letters appear to have been done in weeks, basically. Others are really done like somebody's really, really in a hurry. And then another one, the Song of Solomon. basically a collection of love songs or love poems. Core message: love of Christ, God to His chosen people. Of course, it's chants, poems, and prayers. Emotional, fascinating, dramatic. That's the tonality. And design concept: verse layout similar to a poem, relatively straightforward. And what is it? We got kind of inspired by the way music and songs is actually written up. The design for song pages look like, and we applied it to our design. So certain movement going up and down, but we took great care that actually it's semantically correct, broken down all the lines that you could almost sing it basically from that page if you want to. It's still, sometimes you always have to bring back to your memory what the usual Bible layout really is, and we all look at justified text basically, but still the same text. Then the last example that I'm going to show you is Leviticus. Leviticus, of course, is these are really containing rules of conduct for Israel, which are to regulate the coexistence with God and fellows, as well as religious rights. Core message is a godly life requires the observance of the rules of conduct, as well as the love of your neighbors and enemies. Legal text, that's the classification. The tonality is official, imperative, authoritative, but also monotonous. It's pretty difficult to read the whole book in one, in one round. And so the design concept is actually inspired by law books and by encyclopedias, which is let me show you. Not quite surprising. These are just German samples, pretty authoritative material. And the layout of Leviticus is not trying to cover it up. It's not trying to make it more interesting or more entertaining. It's not entertaining. It's pretty strict, and it's trying to show some rigidity and some strictness. That's also maybe a main principle. If we considered a book that was kind of more dragging on and maybe not so exciting, or we try to stay away from designing too much. So the idea was how much design is really necessary, and could we actually reduce maybe the amount of design? I think there still needs to be cleaned up a little bit in the production phase, but basically the idea is as little as possible, basically. But still to keep this, still to make the emotional and narrative dimension of the text totally clear. So the Bible design is really a process for us. First 5 years went by pretty quickly. And start with the first seminars and lots of materials put together, and the publisher came in, lots of presentation, so many presentations. Going to the fairs, and Frankfurt Book Fair in 2011 seems ancient to me now, and more discussions. It's quite interesting. We also own, we also own a place that is like a converted church, which is privately. So this was actually not a private place. So it added some kind of atmosphere to it. This was the first dummy of the Bible, horrendous, so heavy. We decided quickly, this one, we can't make it. This is the maximum that we just found 2 bookbinders that who were able to bind this piece. It was so heavy, you could kill somebody with it. And then we said, no, this is not going to be a single volume book. What's the point? You're trying to make everything more interesting and more legible and more readable, and then you end up with a book that you can't have on your lap. It's crazy, and not in your bed, nowhere. And then lots of meetings and collections of stuff, and then we did a final layout. So we're quite close to the final result in autumn 2013, like last year. Put everything together, lots of corrections. First ideas on cover designs and interior design, pre-press work, final dummy production. More talks, And what we have now, we would call it a better version, maybe like compare it with software design. 0.9 beta version, that's where we are right now, like 95% done. And I guess what we're going to produce and what we're looking for is like a version 1.0, and that's actually what we're shooting for next year. That's the idea. So what we're looking now, right, is reader feedback. We're showing it in this book at the Leipzig Book Fair this year, and also in Berlin, and here and other places, and more like afterwards in Munich. We're collecting right now. We're collecting reader feedback, and maybe very positive stuff or very constructive feedback, or really devastating feedback, even whatever. We need to have that to start the production phase. And if you have any suggestions, I would like to encourage you to give it to me or to have any questions. And that's basically it for today. So more information on the Bible you can find soon at these pages and or on Facebook. Thank you very much for your coming. First question, Helen.
Sorry about that. So essentially, we've got two books: the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Right.
So 5 books.
Right.
So you're going to have a 5-volume set.
Yes.
Based on those book categories.
Exactly. The 5-volume book is also the split up of the. It's a very Christian view, I would say, on the Bible, to split it up into Old and New Testament. It's kind of forced in a little way. I mean, this is also arguable, of course. You can fill, I think, whole evenings, like 10 evenings with this, who's right, who's wrong, I don't know. But it's like, the focus on the New Testament was kind of desired. And like Old Testament and New Testament, what does it mean, Is the Old Testament kind of less valid than the New Testament, or is it just tradition? Difficult. And we said, let's split it up. Let's not call it, of course we kept the name New Testament because we looked for other names, instead of, okay, keep it, but it worked so far, but maybe if you split up it, this kind of rigid split between old and new is actually fading, and maybe it makes people be more interested in the other books as well, the other volumes as well.
If you're Jewish, you don't see the Old Testament part of the whole Bible as
True.
meaningful to you at all.
True.
You don't accept you don't accept that Old Testament.
That's true. I would.
It's still of importance.
Right. I think it's absolutely. I believe you have to basically. I think basically we're starting from the Bible as a volume. Even that could be disputed. Does it have 66 texts, or should it have 73, or should it be less, or should it be 85, or should we just? What about all the ones that we just found, over the last centuries? Should we all put them also in? So should we end up with 120? This is very difficult.
So the text that you're working with,
Yeah.
we spoke about that a few weeks ago.
Right.
You're working with a very specific text, aren't you?
We work with a text that is. We had a problem with in Germany. We have a dispute between the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. About that. They tried to work together and to come up with a solution that worked for both, but it seems like unbridgeable in a way. And we said, let's not use the most common text from the Protestant Church, and let's not use the most common one in the Catholic Church. Use a version that is accepted by most scholars. It's from Herder. Herder is a huge publisher, and they have their own version. This is quite accepted in Germany. Use this one to demonstrate our idea. From then on, we could actually go also use other versions.
Has there been one reference edition that you used, or several?
For the text, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one. We actually use one translation. That actually, it was also quite difficult to find actually a publisher or somebody to give you the text, to say that you do what you want. And they said, this is our version, it's our own translation. We have this publisher exists for 250 years or even longer. So they're working on their own version for a very, very long time. And said, you know what, take it, do it, whatever you want. And that was actually because the other ones always think, we don't know, what are you doing there? And also, if you're doing great changes and layout changes, you always have to actually give it back to them. They have to sign a release for the whole thing. If they're not happy with what you're doing, you're not getting a release. We said, oh man, that's another problem. So let's do it first, and then maybe, because we have a lot of talks, people said like, or could you do a Lutheran version for me? I don't like to read yours. I said that's actually no problem, because it doesn't matter so much with the system if it's a Lutheran edition or if it's English or another what's the King James, or it basically works with all these versions. The text would read differently, but basically it would still fall in a similar category. I mean, I'm totally aware that it's basically very much like a Western for like a Western Western societies, because those that actually are used to these literary categories. In some other parts of the world, it might not work, because if people don't know what does a drama look like, or if you switch to different typefaces or different cultures that are not used to like Western languages, they might say, I don't get it. Letter layout like this. To me, a letter looks totally different. I don't see it, So it is. I guess it's more like definitely like a West European or American or Western world approach to Bible layout.
What inspired you to take on the project in the beginning?
It's I don't know. It's such a basically because German typography basically started with Gutenberg. This is not really true, but it feels like that sometimes, because printing started and movable type started with Gutenberg in Germany. You always the Bible is always like a kind of a dream project or a nightmare project, I don't know, for typographers. And it's always like this debated, and if you're really naive, you start to do this, at some point. And if you have too much time on your hands, but with my last sabbatical, I'm having right now my second sabbatical. My first sabbatical, I came up with this idea because I just had too much time, I guess, And I tried one text. I tried just a piece of the Bible once with a very small book, and that wasn't difficult. But it's easier said than done. Just to write down a proposal. You know what? We're going to do like a redesign of the Bible for all the pages, for the whole thing. That's written in 10, 15, 20 pages. Takes you like a week, and then you realize, oh man, what is this? Never-ending story. It's unbelievable. But I guess I had this feeling when we looked at the traditional editions, they all had the same problem. I guess also the other people, they never knew what they were getting into. I mean, if you would know exactly what you're getting into, you try to avoid it. But, Helen?
You've had 60 different designs.
Yeah, actually more. We had, I met.
Over the 5 years, they've
Yeah.
just come and gone.
Yeah, they're
Or
like,
you've
yeah.
had a certain team that have been consistent.
The four people that were showing, they were pretty consistent. They were like so much into this Bible project. They didn't want to leave. Everybody that would have said,
What are you going to do next time?
I know. Everyone was saying that if they would have said, sorry, I can't take it anymore. Of course, go, I totally understand. But no, they sticked around for quite some time. But the other ones said, just give one text. I want to do this. And then they all said after 2 weeks, oh man, this is. Why did I take this on? And then they actually, they succeeded in a certain way. It was almost like hiking up a mountain. I had this feeling. They were very happy to have done it, And I think it was very good to advance typographical skills for these people to really understand the text. You were not able to cut out any text. You couldn't say, I don't like this part, just forget about it, No way. So you had to find a solution. First of all, you had to understand it, and before, you had to read it. You had to read the text as a designer. Oh my God, So and then you had to debate it. You had to write like a small expose and show it to the scholars, and they were saying, "Excuse me, you haven't understood anything." do it again, you know. But it was all, nobody had to do it. Nobody was forced to actually do this project. I had like other projects. And and these people are not really religious, you know. Most people they never go to church, you know. And then the scholar said she liked it. She said it was really good, that they had no clue about the Bible. She said, like, if they can find a way actually to get into this text, it's perfect. Because the other ones, you don't need to convince anybody that reads the Bible anyway, you know. If the layout is great or not great, because the people relate so much to the content, they like everything that they read. So you don't have to convince them, you know. So yes, that was.
Who financed the whole thing? Or was it sponsored?
It's so far it's sponsored by the publisher. I mean, whatever we needed so far. But the next step is going to be tough because the printing costs are immense, you know. And that's actually a big struggle that we have. So we're actually disclosing some of the information which we're a little bit untruthful and unfaithful to the publisher, who would like to kill us for that, you know, of giving secrecies away, you know. But we said, like, we have to open the discussion because we also want other publishers to think about if they would be interested to do that. That helped a lot, actually, I must say, because then the publisher got more interested, the original one, to do it, to actually, because he's now afraid of, maybe we lose the whole project at some point. Because the biggest problem is the 5 volume, you know. 5 volumes is so expensive. And they always keep telling you, can we just make 2? No. Or can we just make like a selected version special, the best, the very, very best? Do this first, and then you have the money to do the next one? No, because we know that it doesn't work like this in the publishing house, because if you do the first one and it's successful, it still doesn't mean that you do the complete one at any point. So no. We have to do the big one first, and then maybe you can do the best of version later on if you want to do it. If you're not interested in this, but maybe, you know. That's actually, it's a fight because it's so expensive to do it. But that's actually quite an interesting case here in the US. It just happened that somebody did a Bible on his own and collected money in a crowdsourcing style, and I think he needed $37,000 as far as I learned, and he got $1.3 million for this project. Everybody wanted to have his version, so and I was, of course, just giving them this case, like, you know, what keeps you back? You know, look at this. I mean, somebody just did it, and he has so many people that we want to have his version of the Bible, and why are you so timid? You know, I don't know. It's just, but it's we have the Frankfurt Book Fair is next week, so we have a meeting next week, and hopefully we can close it down for good. And then the production phase is going to start another year. Okay.
That was a beautiful discussion about the diversity of text. Are there any major issues that came up in unifying your edition?
And I mean, like, basically, we're breaking up the unity, right?
Yeah.
And the question is, like, that you're asking is, like,
how do you then present a feeling of whole once you've broken it up?
It's a really, really good question. I think we're trying to show diversity, but at the same time try to make it feel like still being part, sharing something. And the first idea, I guess, is to use the same font, maybe, to just use one color, to just use one format. But we're not so... we don't have a big problem with that. If it maybe even falls apart a little bit here and there, I guess it's not falling apart like totally crazy, but a little bit, because like I said before, if there were so many authors involved in the Bible, you know, and it went on for so many centuries, why would you actually make it feel like a unit? You know, to me, this approach, I mean, it was done all the time. You know, they always try to sell the Bible to us as something that is like a great unit of text, which maybe is, but it's not from one century. It was done over a long time. It's a collage of texts, basically.
Do you feel that in the way that you're presenting the edition, that point is made by the design, or are you going to write something scholarly to present that concept of
Yeah.
diversity.
Yeah. That's like an additional, like a comment basically on that. Yeah. That's what they feel. Yeah. They feel like that it's necessary. I brought some reports here also. I mean, maybe if you want to have a little closer look at the book, because I know it's like a digital presentation. You know, you can't really touch it. I couldn't bring all the books. I have the 5 volume is done. It's like there. It's not a dummy. It's really like it could actually go through all the pages. But I have 100% size, some samples here that if you want to just take a look at. Yeah. So more questions?
I know that everybody in this room probably loves print, but I think there's a lot of people who perhaps for them it's not as everyday. Could you be persuaded when this project is done to tackle the digital version of this?
Yeah, the problem that we found is maybe the format right now. We looked into, of course, like iPad versions and all that, and the iPad is still pretty small, you know. But I mean, for the iPad version, we thought about that. I think after we've done all this literary categorization part, you know, it's relatively easy to do a digital version that kind of would show the diversity of the text to a certain degree. But it's still quite complicated, like a 2-page. You know, for most of our stuff, we need 2 pages, and that's maybe very traditional in a way, you know, like very old-fashioned. I don't know. I think the mirrored pages, basically. You know, this we're working on with the layout of the text is essential for us, and to actually see to open the book and see a layout principle that actually that you're used to, that you know. Basically to see, like the average reader can see, oh, this is a drama. It looks a little like a drama. So I might actually read the text with a different emphasis, like I would have read a drama, like another drama. Yeah.
There's a lot you could do this.
True. 2,400 pages of animation. I would, but we actually thought about that too in the beginning. So isn't it too heavy? Should we do something else? But I think would do a totally different version. We would actually we would just forget about the whole idea of 2 pages. You know, why do we need 2 pages layouts in digital formats? Why don't we just differentiate between a poem and prose and do all that, and that's it? You know.
You wouldn't have to worry about the publishing costs.
That's true. But the idea is there, like but it's in the Bible, you know, to have it black and white printed, have a weight to it. I don't know, the Bible. It was quite interesting when we started this project that you know, there was a lot of criticism of the Christian religion, like really attaching itself to like a printed book, you know, like because the book, it was interesting. The Romans also knew about books, you know. They weren't so fond of books, you know. They said like, we're not sure. So all the short-lived stuff was actually put on paper because you could easily fool around with it. You could fake it, and you could copy, and you can actually other authors could actually change part of the text, and they say no, let's stick more with. If it's really important, let's chisel it into stone, or keep it somewhere, or put it on, like, you know, what do you say, engrave it into some kind of material, burn it, whatever, you know. But paper, we're not so sure about that, you know. So I don't know. I mean, the next step, if it's digital, I guess you have to totally step away from all these.
People have their phones like it's almost like an attachment. It's so personal having your phones on your, and you know, I've been to dinner where people have their phone on the table right there, and they don't let it out of their sight. So having something like that on there makes sense.
Yeah.
So you already have the YouVersion app that has every single language, and it's free.
It's free. Yeah. So basically, digital, I would say, is. I think the limitations of design are pretty strong, and because our idea relies so much on people see the relation to a letter looks like a letter, and it's difficult to display a letter on a very tiny device. David?
Yeah, so when you were doing the research of previous Bibles, you didn't find any other examples where people have done that idea of like letter looking like a letter or song?
We looked
it's
for
so
it.
Logical, right?
It's so logical. I guess the only problem is it's so difficult and it takes so much time, and you need to team up with scholars. And I don't think that scholars and designers are really best friends. You know?
I mean, would you speculate
I don't
that
think so.
the reason why people defaulted to this kind of two-column was just kind of and treated all the information same as a kind of like an expedient, lazy thing to do? Like that was
lazy was.
Like that's
it was practical. I would definitely say that. I mean, if you do it by hand, we have no idea. You know who did it. You know, none of us actually did it. The whole Bible, the writing of a Bible, in 3 years. You know, I think if you would have done that, and then somebody would have told you, no. Reformatted every. I think it's now possible with digital possibilities, you know. And at some time, it was also. If you do what we've done, there's also the Bible loses some of its maybe seriousness, and it's more transparent in a way. And some of this, it was like a code, you know. The Bible is like a code; it's mysterious. You have to be really very seriously interested in the Bible to actually read the whole Bible. You know, it's like a challenge almost. And I believe if we make it a little bit,
but it should be a challenge. I mean,
yes.
Why should it be user-friendly to start with?
Because you could argue that. On the other hand, you can say,
that's a legitimate question from a believer's standpoint.
That's true.
Take the Book of Kells.
Right.
Was it designed user-friendly?
Not really. Right. On the other hand, it is interesting to. It's a good question, but the scholars feel okay. You know, their response is basically the interest in the Bible is going down a lot, tremendously, and they say, yes, we could say let's not make it more user-friendly, but the problem is it's going to fade away. You can still argue, who cares? You know, these people are not really truly interested in the Bible, so whatever. But they say, no, we would like to see the Bible spread spread, and actually would like more people to read in the Bible. Because I also believe that there is a certain interest. People know about the Bible. They are not maybe they're too lazy to read in it. They would like to see what's in there, but they don't want to spend like 2 weeks actually to find out what's in there.
Plus, I think it's always fun to expose people to something well designed.
Yeah.
As young as possible, as many as possible.
Right.
I mean, the Bible, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And when people are exposed like that, they start thinking about the whole world that way.
Yeah. It's also, I guess, some texts in the Bible are really, I mean, it's quite sad that people, because it all looks the same, you have difficulties, unless you're really well trained by the Bible, to find these parts that you're really interested in, you know. And what we try to make it more transparent. There are some texts that need to be read in a linear way, but others could be read selectively. And Bible insiders know that. It's nothing new to them, but we try to make it visual. Now you can see it. Now you can see these are texts you can read. Pick selectively, other ones you just can even skip, you know, if you have no relationship to all these generations and who was conceived by whom, and you know, and who was the father and mother of whatever person. If you're not interested, you can just skip the whole thing. This is maybe not in the interest of the Bible, but it's possible to actually move on to the text that you're really interested in. And it was always possible, but it was more difficult to do that. Yeah.
This version's in German.
Yeah.
I'm assuming if the publisher takes it on.
Yeah.
So at the beginning you were saying there's 2,000 of the Bible published. Do you look at what's the percentage of languages and what's the most percentage or the most popular language? Is it English?
Yeah.
Or is it
It also explains why this one person got $1.3 million, you know. So English would definitely be a good choice to do that. But the publisher, of course, I mean, like if it's all in their in their head, you know.
Historically, when they illuminated manuscripts, they were really just a power book.
Yes.
Most people couldn't read.
Right.
And most people, the guys, the monks who are illuminating it, they're going to church. The church is managing the population.
Right.
It's a big book of propaganda.
Absolutely.
In this day and age, when anyone can have access to.
True.
So I think making it more accessible and breaking the text down in an interesting way would make it more attractive to people who are genuinely interested in reading.
Or maybe, and I guess it's a big miss, you know. I would say many people have. Okay, sorry, what we have basically done. Many people have this book in their bookshelf, right? But they never open it, and it's because it's difficult. And like you would like, I mean, you kind of would like to, even not from a religious point of view, just from a cultural point of view. You would like to look a little bit smarter in a way, you know. Maybe I know this is in the Bible and I know where it's coming from, but I don't know. And maybe it's for those people. I'm not really sure if truly religious people need this version. I would say maybe not. It's really for those that are really curious and are really interested and want to know what the Bible is all about. And it's maybe a little help.
So the scholar that you worked with,
yeah,
the guy who was her mentor,
right.
Has he seen how you've broken it down?
Yeah. It was like, I was making this joke before. It was like Martin Luther King, and I have this dream, one day, the Bible will be totally readable, and I will not fall asleep, He had this dream in the 50s or 60s, whatever, and now he's seen parts of it, and he's very happy. But he also knows that it can never really satisfy all wishes. We're really hoping for the first version, like 1.0. Then get really feedback on the different books. Maybe somebody says, I like this version a lot that you've done, but I really hate what you've done with this book. You really, this is horrible, And then maybe we can go on from there to do the, 1.2 or 2.0 version, which maybe changes a bit of that. I hope it's not like Microsoft. I hope it's not like that, coming out with all these flaws, I hope this is not true.
But in a way, what you've done is what the business was for priests and ministers and all that, is to enlighten the text, and make it more understandable. So
that's the idea, because people don't go to church. Most people, all churches are empty. A lot of them. There's nobody that actually illuminates or highlights the text for them. There's nobody to help you. You can even ask your parents. They don't even know what it's all about. So. You have to discover it yourself, mostly, and for those basically, that's exactly the point. Okay.
I mean, you showed the Chagall Bible, and I was wondering, did you ever consider at one point to have illustrations in there too?
Yeah, very good question. I had this also in my notes, but that's just so much for 50 minutes, whatever. We thought about it, and then we said actually there are really good illustrated Bibles, and but we said like but we said like no, the books should be shaped up really by the text, by the character of the text. If you put in like a nice illustration, it draws all the attention away from the the layout basically, and we actually want to use the layout to work for the text,